Hello, welcome to Hortonworks Video KBs. Today we're going to talk about how to connect Windows Visual Query tool such as DB Visualizer to Hive on an kerberos HTTP cluster. For this, we will be using the JDBC Uber driver. My name is Pablo Idiaquez. I'm TSC for Hortonworks Support Department. Okay, so we're going to go real quick over the agenda. In this video, we're going to check on the software and config files required. Um, how do you need to set up the domain and user principal? This is the username to be used for connecting remotely to the cluster. Um, to show how to do a test on the Kerberos session ticket on HTTP. Install the required software on the PC. Test the session ticket, and finally test the connection to Hive from the Visual tool. Okay, so this is the list of software and config files required. Um, so you may take a screenshot of this slide so you can download and make sure you have everything available. So from cluster side, we have the HTTP cluster 265, and emphasis on the version here because it does need to match the drivers that we will use later. For the driver itself, we're going to use the Team Bales Uber driver JDBC, which is available on GitHub. Same version as the cluster. Please download that to the PC. And you will require username, which is called principal, for the remote connection that has to belong to the same domain or realm as the one set up for the cluster. This is what goes after the @ sign. So this needs to be exactly the same. In case you have a different domain for the Windows user than the one in the cluster, you will require to set up a trust relationship between those domains, which is not covered on this video. So make sure it's the same, or you ask the Kerberos or Active Directory admin to allow that trust relationship. The visual query tools on Windows, we will use the DB Visualizer free version, um, which does support this type of Java JDBC drivers. And this next item is optional, but very recommended. It's the MIT Kerberos for Windows. It will allow to make sure the ticket is in place and the config file is working. For the config file, we will be copying over the KRB5 Kerberos conf from the same cluster to the Windows and then do some quick conversion. Last step, it's also optional just in case you don't have naming resolution that is required. So from Windows, you need to be able to connect with a fully qualified hostname to the cluster. Okay, again, going over, this was based on a already available knowledge article on Hortonworks about how to connect the visualizer to HTTP Hive from Team Bales. And please use these links to download the required software. So we're gonna make a quick pause here on this slide so you can pause and make sure you download all these three software components, install it on your PC, and then we can move over with the actual exercise. Okay. Now on the Windows PC, let's download the JDBC Uber driver for Hive from GitHub. You have the URL on the top of the browser, and we are selecting version 265, which has to match HTTP version on the cluster. So you see on the bottom, it's being downloaded. And we have the same version, 265. Okay, very good.
Next step will be to get the kerb5.conf, which is the kerberos setup file, from one of the nodes on the cluster to the Windows box. For that, you can use WinSCP or PuTTY SCP command line, which I'm using in this case. So I'm adding the username at host, and then under the etc folder, you will find a kerb5.conf file on any of the nodes of the cluster. Just copy that file over to the Windows, and then we have to change the file extension. We will check real quick the contents of the file. Okay, here we're copying the kerb5.conf from the Unix to kerb5.ini, which is the default extension on Windows. Okay, we completed that step to get the config from the cluster and rename it to .ini. Next step will be to add this property, which is UDP preference limit equal to 1. This property will allow to enforce TCP connection from the remote boxes to the KDC or Active Directory. UDP will not be used, only TCP once added this property. I'm using Notepad++ here to add it under the lib default section of that file. Also added a empty line after that property. To save this file to the Windows folder, you will require admin rights on that box. So here it is, the new kerb5.ini, which the UDP preference limit added already. And now we're going to test with MIT Kerberos tool to see if we're able to get the ticket. But before that, don't forget to copy the new kerb5.ini to the Windows folder, which will be the default location for this config file for both Java runtime and MIT Kerberos tool. So this is kind of a trick to put it on the /Windows folder. So there I'm entering the username and password, and there you go. We have a ticket good for 12 hours in this case.
Now that we have installed the visualizer and downloaded the JDBC Uber driver, we can proceed with the setup inside the visualizer. As you notice there, I have a command prompt open under the visualizer installation folder, which is under program file. And inside it, there is a Java runtime under GRE/bin. We will use that folder later for the kinit commands to get a Kerberos ticket for this connection. Okay, so here on the wizard, you can enter any meaningful name for the new Hive connections, like the name of the cluster or Hive. In this case, I'm going to enter Hive hyphen Kerberos. Then you click on Next, and you need to select the driver. The visualizer comes with several drivers embedded, but Hive is listed but without drivers. So you need to load the driver that we have downloaded previously from GitHub, and this is version 265 for HTTP 265. So we click on that, and it's uncompressing the contents of the jar file. This Uber driver contains several jars, which you can find under Hive client/lib, and it's prepared to have everything needed for this connection. Okay, so now you can see the green check mark on the left side of the Hive connection, and this is the actual connect string. So we have to translate the beeline connection string for connecting directly to the Hive server. So you need to know in which node you have Hive server 2 running and on which port.
So we need to enter that information in here and add this principal equal hive slash host at realm. Um, this is required because we're using Kerberos. So under database, we add this principal information, and on the database server field, we add the node which has running Hive server 2. Okay, so we click on ping server and we have successfully verified the connection. This is just a network connection test, so it has not authenticated anything. So this is kind of just a ping to the port 10,000, just that. And if you see here, when we exit from that setup, the connection fails with a GSS initiate failed. This is because we have not finished the setup yet. So we still have to tell the visualizer where our kerb5.ini it's located. And for that, we're going to go to the tools sections on the visualizer and then tool properties. This will be Java virtual machine properties, which will be loaded on the startup um, of the DB visualizer. So after we modify this, it will require a restart. Inside the Java runtime folder, we have all the binaries, including the Kerberos tools from Java. So that is knit and klis. If you run the klis, we have no credentials yet, so we will have to get new ticket before starting the visualizer. So there is no credential at the moment. So we're gonna run the knit and we are passing the username that we have prepared for this connection, and we need to enter the password. Okay, now we have a new ticket cache file there under the user folder, and this one will be used later on by the visualizer to establish the connection. So it's good for 1 day, 24 hours. And now we are starting the visualizer once the ticket cache file is already there. And the version of Java that comes embedded, it's 180.172. And now we have the connection that we set up earlier. And if we click on that one, we'll attempt the connection and keep your fingers crossed. And there you go. We have a check mark, green check mark, which means we connected to the Hive server 2, and we can now list table contents, everything in there. Okay, you see the tables on their default database, and that means we have a working connection. Well, from here on, it's about to you how to you want to use the visualizer tools for building your queries. So this will be useful for people on your team building new queries, so they can have access to the data sets without having shell connection to the nodes on the cluster. There we're running a sample query and it retrieves the data. Okay, so that's it. Thanks for watching this video until the end. My name is Pablo Ariaques, and if you have any question, you can email us at supportkb@hortonworks.com.